JB, we are live. We're gonna go ahead and let people fill in, but go ahead and give me some of the spoken words so that I can test your audio level.
Spoken word, Robert. The
Yes.
Bears won 23-20 at home against the Houston Texans, donning their 1936 throwbacks, moving that record to 4-2 when they wear said throwbacks.
I was gonna say they don't lose in this
They
jersey.
did, they did last year.
Okay, yes. Well, I
That's
more
because
meant.
they decided, like, hey, these things are lucky. Let's play them against the Packers.
Yeah, what was that? They were
Smart.
they said that bad coaching. They put the jerseys in no position to succeed,
Yeah,
right?
that was bad.
But it's such a funny one because as people fill in, JB, like we've got a real doozy of a game. I feel like to talk about here, but just before we get into the show itself, because I don't know how you felt. The worst part about this game, actually, I'll repeat exactly what I said pre-show, and then I'll probably repeat it on the show itself. Like, Eddie Jackson. I was like, EJ? But so, anyways, because EJ Snyder, I was like, what interception? How does he throw an interception? Anyways, so I want to just go ahead and give a shout out to Jeff. Everybody applaud for Jeff as he's going to be pulling double duty, breaking down both the post game and also still doing Bear and Balanced. Truly, Jeff, you do the most. So thank you. You do a ton of things. But so let's see. At this stage, the worst part about this game, Jeff, is for anybody out there, by anybody's definition of what you need a young quarterback around them to succeed, it feels to me like I can't just say, well, Fields doesn't have Jalen Waddle and he doesn't have Tyreek Hill. Of course he can't play well. Like, he's got running support. The Bears can get play action working. The line, while they're not amazing, JB, is holding. And Fields, even in a game where they rush for 281 dadgum yards, they aren't eclipsing 100 passing yards. I mean, JB, obviously this is the nice reminder that even as pass happy as the NFL gets, I can't go out there and throw for 100 yards, and Fields is proving it. But it's a weird victory Monday, you know? Or I guess it's victory Sunday. But it's a weird victory post game. How do you feel about this before we start recording?
I mean, we talked about it on the 10-minute drill where the stat of the week for the Bears was they averaged like 76 and a half total passing yards, which is your passing yards minus the yards lost on sacks. 32nd in the league. 31st in the league was the Giants at like 159. So they weren't even half of the 31st place team. And they're coming out of this one and they barely raised their average. I mean, they have 82 out of today, right? Fields is 8 for 17 for 106, but lost 24 yards on 5 sacks. I mean, like, I've been a Bears fan my whole life, which is 4 decades now. This is some of the worst passing performances that I can ever remember, stringing together. And I lived through the Craig Krenzel era. So, I mean, this is brutal.
Oh,
It's brutal.
it's brutal, JB, and even worse. So, hot thing though, I just want to shout out the broadcasts before we get in, as all 22 breakdowns have become more and more popular. When some big play happens, they will give us the all 22 angle, and thank goodness for it. The only problem being that every time they go to the all 22 angle, JB, there's an open receiver downfield that's like 1 or 2 in the progression, and Fields pulled the ball down and ran it, which would be fine if he was a rookie, but he's not a rookie. And so there's, like Brandon's saying, like, before we start recording, I need to be so clear. There's a lot of positive on this Bears team. There really is. The defense looks fun. Eberflus has them playing fast, regardless of who's on the defensive line. The running game looks awesome. As much as MP, I know you say Roquan won the game, it's hard for me to not say Khalil Herbert won the game, because when you have 281 yards on the ground, like normally, JB, I feel like when you compare passing yards to rushing yards, you expect to see about a 3-to-1 split. 100-yard rushing is about, like, 100-yard rushing is equivalent to roughly 300 yards passing. That may not be fair. It may be more like a 2.5 split. Like 100 yards is 250 passing yards. Well, if we use that same metric, the Bears picked up like 660 yards on the ground, or yards through the air, so to speak. They were just everywhere, and they got everything working. And there's a lot, like Eddie Jackson got involved, Kendall Vildor made plays, and there's so much going right that I think it highlights how wrong the quarterback situation's going. Because last week, JB, everybody got beat, you know? But this week, it felt like the whole team beat the Texans, sans Darnell Mooney and Justin Fields. And it was that's a real dagger just in the heart, you know?
Yeah, man. I mean, you could have made a lot of money just taking all the unders on Bears passing game.
For 3 weeks.
Under on Fields, everything, attempts, completions, yards, take the over on the interceptions, take the under on the touchdowns, take the under on Cole Kmet, take the under on Darnell Mooney. Like, I mean, you could have really cleaned up, and they just, even like, it's tough to say, oh, well, 2 games in, I know everything I need to know about a team, right? And like that, I got a strike in Survivor today because I took the Chiefs, because I'm like, hey, the Chiefs are playing well and the Colts are playing like garbage. Like, you just take the trends and go for it. And Colts showed up, Chiefs didn't make plays, things change, right? So you do have a sense that these things will potentially bounce back, or if they're going to bounce back, but they don't bounce up after 3 weeks. You start to wonder to yourself, is there a bounce, or is this just going to be a slog the whole year? Like you say, there's some good things to talk about, and I hope we talk about them. And 24 hours later, when Lester and I get together, it's much easier to do that because you have a second viewing, and you've got some time to think about things. But on first viewing, it's hard to not walk away being like, hey, they won, but man, that was not great.
Right. And I mean, full disclosure, JB, I am envious, because I feel like if you got to, or like, I feel like Bear and Balanced gets to be a much more fun this show this week, where we get to talk about all the reasons that they did win a 23-20 game that was a nail biter all the way down to the final 2 minutes, right? I mean, can I just say something before we need to start recording? We're going off. But this was a great coaching performance. Either that, or you're one of the people that hates the coaching because the passing game isn't working. But like, if you just assume for a moment that Justin Fields within the context of this offense is awful, which is a big assumption, but let me make it for a moment, then the coaching staff did everything in their power to work around that and found 23 points and a big defensive play at the end to seal the deal. It's nice in that viewpoint. The problem is, as Elon said in our chat here, so if Fields ain't the guy, what then? And as Jordan said up higher, how do you go from being good almost every single level of football until you get to the NFL and you were better as a rookie? Like, for all the fun that we made of Matt Nagy's offense, why did he look more comfortable in it? And so what's wrong? Becomes the honest question, And even worse, JB, the coverages that Fields was going up against and struggling with, these weren't complicated. These were like basic Tampa 2, which he sees in practice all the time because they run it. Like, it's bizarre watching this football game. I, as an evaluator, can only say he played poorly, but when people say, why did he play poorly, I'm at a loss. You know what I mean?
Well, it's hard. It's hard to know. I mean, we can go down and break it down as we probably will try. But at some point, if he doesn't pull the trigger when things are open, and he tries to force it in there when it's not there, and those things start adding up, those things start happening with regularity rather than as the exception, then you have to start questioning things. And it is a new offense for him. You have to give a little bit of time, but he had the all off season. He's the unquestioned guy. He had all the reps. Like, all those excuses are off the table. And so at some point, he has to pull the trigger when it's there. You have to realize what's NFL open versus what's college open. You're not going to get college open anymore. So, we have to get to that point. And I think it's fair to start stacking those reps where he's missing those opportunities that are there. And then he's forcing balls in that, I don't know if he misread the coverage on that second interception, or if he just said, F it, I'm going to throw it up, or what it was. But that was rough. That was a bad ball.
Like,
bad ball.
That's a basic cover two shell with a linebacker right there in the middle. I mean, Mooney beat the linebacker, I guess, but you got to know somebody's out there. Anyways, you ready to go? I'm ready to go.
So
Let's do this. Okay, we are recording on two separate fronts. We're good. What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Me, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, right here on the Windy City Gridiron podcasting channel. And I am here with our road warrior, Jeff Berckes, who's just all over the channel, coming at you live right after a really gritty, grindy, close 23-20 win at home over the Houston Texans. That, Jeff, it's such a weird game because the Bears dominated on the ground. 281 yards. The Bears got big plays out of big players. Picks from both Roquan Smith and Eddie Jackson. The line looks strong in the run blocking, and the Bears are jimmying loose big runs out of even guys like Equanimeous St. Brown. And yet the passing game looks so, no other word for it, bad, that I can't be the only one who walked away from this feeling worse than I did excited. This felt like a win that was, we beat the Texans instead of we could really compete this year. And we knew that. You and I have been saying it on the 10-minute drill for weeks now, that wins and losses weren't the goal this season. But if the goal of the season was development, there's a specific player that we had in mind to see development from. And right now, things are getting much worse before they get better. There's no wet ball today. There's no good defense today. There's no it's Lambeau Field today. There's no he might have been psyched out because it was Sunday Night Football today. This was one of, I think, Jeff Fields' worst performances as a Bear, and that came at a weird time emotionally. But Jeff, what are you thinking?
hey, Robert, thanks for welcoming me to the show.
That's your welcome.
Make my one appearance this year. This is all you get. Absolutely one appearance right after post game. I'm glad that the first 25 options bailed on you so that we could talk about this nice victory here. It is one of those like, yay question mark where there's a W in the win column, which even as we've talked about, we don't care about the wins and losses. But then when you watch football games, you want your team to win. They particularly want them to beat teams that probably aren't very good. You want them to beat the divisional. I mean, you just like get into games and it's very hard to be like, it doesn't matter. It's fine.
Right.
It's not a big deal. Right. So you always celebrate the wins. They're hard to come by. I think that any kind of win this year is character building. It's good feel for this team as they try to rebuild. So I'm never going to discount a win, even if it's ugly. I'm a Bears fan. I've been a Bears fan my whole life. I've seen plenty of ugly wins. So there's nothing wrong with an ugly win in and of itself. I think that Bears fans have a little bit of like, the more things change, the more they stay the same, where we've seen this movie before where there are good things about the football team that we feel very familiar with, running game, defense, and then the passing game that doesn't work. And so what the ending of this movie is. If the movie continues like this and you can't develop a passing game, it means that this team's not going to go very far. And it's certainly harder and harder to do that in the modern NFL. So this is one of those things where now all the excuses are evaporating and you have to start taking it very seriously, that there are potentially real warning signs that this passing game, or maybe Justin Fields in particular, has some real question marks that we were hoping might not be there at this point. So that's kind of the initial takeaway from the game, which is kind of an odd feeling when you walk away with a victory.
Oh, absolutely. And hey, before we dig into some of the negative, because I think the negative jumps out and bites you on the ankle, right? But there are some really good things in this game. I mean, the Bears got, like we said, big-time plays from big-time players. The Bears' running game right now looks creative. It looks awesome. Guys are hitting their marks. You've got the offensive line blocking better than it has in the last probably decade. Or at least since John Fox instituted some basic outside zone where guys were hitting their marks. But I think this looks more diverse than that. They're doing awesome stuff with the toss game. Jet sweeps actually get the defense to bite on them. It's hard, JB, under any circumstances, to run for 281 yards in a football game in the NFL and not have done something right, regardless of who your opponent is. But it's strange because as people get into talking about play calling balance, because I've seen all over Twitter, JV, there are people who would trade it all to see a 40 pass game out of Fields. And in their own words, I would rather he just suck and we lose the game in 40 passes than win like this. And the problem is, Jeff, I worry that the coaches may so not trust Justin Fields, as we saw with the 2 interceptions that he threw on second and third downs, that's part of why we're getting these third down passes. I mean, it hurts that in the same game as a 3rd and 6, which literally brought the Boo Birds out in Soldier Field, we got a different 3rd and 6 where Fields threw an interception into triple coverage on a basic Tampa 2 look, from what I can tell on the broadcast, so imperfect viewing here, that he should never be throwing because he practices against cover 2. He practices against Tampa 2. This is the defense he went up against all throughout training camp. I'm a little shell-shocked, for lack of a better word, JB, that Fields was this bad against a defense that he should be so much more familiar with, because it looked to me like a young quarterback that had rushing support, that had play action, that had clean pockets to throw from, and even had open receivers. And like that we saw on that first Kmet interception, sometimes even when Fields did read the field well, he just missed him. And for a guy who I know we have hailed and hailed and hailed as being extremely accurate downfield, that's one of his huge strengths. You can't be missing some of the throws that I feel like he did today. It was rough to watch.
There was a little Rex Grossman in him there where it almost felt a little predetermined. Like, I'm frustrated. I feel like this is the look that I think I have, and I'm going to take this throw. F it. Let's go deep, right? And that's what it felt like a little bit. It felt a little predetermined. It wasn't a well-placed throw to begin with, and it was a poor decision on top of that. You combine those two things, you deserve to get picked off in this league, and that's exactly what happened. And so, you're going to get punished for bad decision making. You're going to get punished for inaccurate throws. He got punished for both of those things today on 2 interceptions. He did, quite simply, he just didn't play well. And so is this a product of the new offense, and it takes time? A lot of really good quarterbacks have taken time to get used to this offense, and maybe we'll see that progression throughout. What's frustrating is, and I understand what that person's saying, I don't care if we lose, and I just want to see the 40 pass attempts. I think that you're desperate a little bit to let's just see what this looks like. Just let him drop back, throw the ball. Let's see if we can get a lot of reps and see what he's good at, what he struggles with, and just play this out, because the more data that we get is going to determine whether or not this is the guy that you build around, or this is the guy that you say, you know what, we thought we had it, but it doesn't look like it's going to work out. Thank you. We're going to have a high pick. We'll move on to another quarterback.
Yep. And the problem is that the Bears coaching staff does not see it that way. I mean, as much as the fan would look and say, hey, worst case scenario, we lose a bunch of games to draft a new quarterback, it's easy to forget that this is Luke Getsy's big break. This is Matt Eberflus's big moment. Like, first impressions mean everything in every facet of human living, and it's no exception when it comes to these guys' big opportunity. They want to win as many games as it takes, and if it takes handing the ball off 40 times a game to avoid the fact that the quarterback that they've been stuck with, because let me be plain, I don't think there's any world where Trevor Siemian comes into these games. Like, Fields is the number one selling commodity inside of the Chicago Bears right now. He is playing. Whether that comes straight from the owner, whether that comes from polls, I don't think it's realistic to say, well, if the coaching staff doesn't trust him, then why are they playing him? Because they have to. I mean, he's the guy they traded up for last year. He's the guy that's been on all their advertisements. You get it. I get it. He also looks like a quarterback with almost no confidence. Like, right now, I don't know about or what you saw, Jeff, but on some of the replays, it looked like Fields' body language on the sidelines was just heartbroken. And I mean, not to turn into body language experts, reminding me of the way people talked about Jay Cutler, but it feels like Fields isn't excited about his performance either. And I mean, who would be? But it makes me wonder what the next 14 weeks are going to look like, because there is no world here where Fields is out of time. Not today. He's not out of time this week. He's not out of time next week. He's not out of time by the bye. If he is, then that means he must not have even eclipsed 1,000 yards in 10 games, which, I mean, hey, not impossible at this rate. But all jokes aside, there's some clear there. I think everybody's just at a loss. I barely know where to start, Jeff, because even when we were dissecting Trubisky and saying, okay, but that 3rd and 8 throw, that's way too far out. I mean, we could point to multiple bad throws. We could point to multiple bad reads. We could point to some offensive mistakes, whether it's the offensive line. I didn't think Larry Borum had a particularly strong game, but there was enough against this Texans team for Fields to look dramatically better than the 99 yards. And is it 4 sacks that he ended up with?
5.
Five. Goodness gracious. One of them wasn't his fault. The Petrie one where he turned and got hit right there. Like, I'll totally give him a pass on that one. But some of the other ones were not good. And I don't know. Help me through this. I feel like the hot Cheetos guy that like put a hot Cheeto in his mouth and it's just like ripping hot takes out. Like, I can't control myself and get moderate again. Help me level out.
So I think to complete the thought on the guy that says, I just want 40 pass attempts because I just want to see it, right? I think that there is a tendency for some people to view football like baseball, where you have like a money ball approach where you're like, hey, you know what? If we're not going to compete, we just need to be last so that we maximize the draft capital. And we need to strip our team of all good players, sell it for parts, trade Robert Quinn, trade Roquan Smith, trade David Montgomery, which obviously not going to happen now, even if it was.
Big sad.
With an injury.
Wah.
Yeah. So there's some of that, and football is never going to be baseball. There's some elements of analytics that I think you can incorporate in football to make you a better decision maker, and I think certainly team building. But once the general manager sets the lineup for the year, right? Like the roster for the year, and says, here's the guys we're going through. We've decided here's our 53. This is what we're going with. Those coaches are going to do everything in their power to win football games,
whatever it looks like.
That the Bears made a decision to hire Matt Eberflus, who's a defensive head coach who has ties to Rod Marinelli, who has ties to Lovie Smith, who has ties to Tony Dungy, right? Those guys have been in the league for a long time. They know what they're doing. They have a real system that is now coming back in vogue, right? And one of the elements of how they win football games is they protect the football. And if they see their quarterback as being someone who they can't trust to put the ball in the air 40 times because they think that's going to lead to too many turnovers, and they're having success running the ball, and they're playing good enough or good defense, that can take the ball away, that's how they're going to win football games. And that's their approach. That's what they're going to try to do. That doesn't mean that there can't be development, or we won't see a different football team in October, November, December as Fields continues to develop, hopefully, into this offense. But it's understandable that this coaching staff would want to try to win football games like this. And of course, they want to win football games. In all of those, there's 53 guys on a roster. And all of those guys, what they want to do? They want to win football games because they want to get paid. And it's a lot more fun to win football games. So they don't care about your idea of, not your idea, Robert, but analytics driven guy
for a little while. So
to say, let's lose all these games. They don't want to do that. They don't want to be part of that. They want to win football games. Right now they're 2-1. And they've got a Giants game next week that they could win. Right. And so they believe in themselves. And I'll tell you what, you stack some wins and you get some excitement and buzz going around the locker room, this coaching staff, this city. There's a lot of money to spend next year. There's nothing wrong with that being a big takeaway for this team, that they fight hard, they're in games, they pull out wins, because that will attract more people when you have the resources. Let's not forget, Robert, that this team is spending the least amount of cash for players on the field this year, and they have the 3rd most dead money in the entire league. This is a year that they're telling you with their dollars that they weren't going to be a great football team, but they're still competing and they're still off to a 2-1 start.
Absolutely, JB. I mean, to use the way that I've said it on Twitter before, Matt Eberflus is not tanking. No coach tanks. Ryan Poles might be. We don't know. I mean, he's a GM who had job security, and him stripping the team down so that the team would lose as many games as it could while getting better, that's actually on the table in the first year of his career. But we're missing the point, or at that point we're getting a little too far off the point. I think that the hardest part about this, let me see. So the worst part about this game, because I applaud you for being positive, JB, is that you're exactly right. I mean, things like a good, stingy defense that made plays when they need to, and a dynamic running attack that gets a lot of things going on the ground is great. But if Justin Fields isn't the answer at quarterback, and granted, there's a lot of discussion to be had here, is Luke Getsy and the coaching staff setting Fields up for success? We don't really know. We're not in the meeting rooms. We don't know what they are and what they aren't doing to make him comfortable. I mean, it's, Jeff, we're looking at the polar opposite. This feels like 2019 again with Nagy and Trubisky, but it's like the tails version of that being heads, where Nagy truly let Mitch just pass his way out of Chicago. Like in 2019, week 1, there's a reason that Mitch got 45 passes to go win the football game. And if memory serves, only ended up with about 10 points. It may have been just 3, but I digress. The point is that here right now, the Bears are winning, which would be helpful if they didn't need a quarterback, and quarterbacks are hard to come by. I mean, as easy as New England made it look, getting Mac Jones at 15, it's tough to find one. And then when you do, they're not usually ready to play as rookies. So I don't know this. Let me put it this way, Jeff. If it sounds like I've given up on Justin Fields, I haven't. But I did not come into this season thinking that by week 3, I'd actually be having to look at legitimate alternative options at quarterback. And the last 2 performances back-to-back don't really give me any other choice. Though I will say that this win is a credit to the coaching staff if you are down on Justin Fields, because they looked a problem in the eye and coached around it. So I do feel like the most positive thing you could say here is that if you're down on the staff, you can still be high on Justin Fields because you probably think they're using him badly. But if you are down on Justin Fields, be welcome to feel high on the staff, because they're getting as much out of the football team as they feel like they can. They're just working with a really tough situation at quarterback. Maybe. Hard to tell.
45 attempts through 3 games is a tough way to try to evaluate anything. And I think as analysts, that's the hardest part of all of this, is that I don't feel like I have enough data to really do much with. And the data that I do have is rough. It's not good, right? So you want to be able to say something after 3 games, but it's pretty dangerous. This is not a great Texans team. They're fine. They've played better than what their 0-2-1 record shows. They're a tough team in terms of defense. Like, they've kept their opponents down. But is that because the Colts aren't very good? Is that because the Broncos aren't very good? Or, is it because they're actually kind of fundamentally sound on defense? But you can't keep using that either. Like, you've got to be able to dictate pace. We should probably flip over to the good stuff, though, because
we should.
Again, this running attack, you lose David Montgomery early. He had 3 carries and then he was hurt and he's out. And your backup running back, who a lot of people like a lot, in Khalil Herbert, comes in and carries the ball for 157 yards on 20 carries and has 2 scores, including a 52-yarder where he just looked like he was shot out of a cannon. And I think that the worst thing that could possibly happen for Montgomery was to take an injury. I don't have an update on what his injury is or what his outlook is. I didn't see anything, but the Bears are in good hands with Khalil Herbert. We'll see what Trestan Ebner can do as a backup, but Herbert, this is his opportunity to show that the Bears would be in good hands with him as a full-time starter.
Mm-hmm. And not to mention, JB, this offense fits Herbert like a glove. I mean, like you said, outside zone running and a lot of the power stuff, I think fits David Montgomery very well, because if I could be honest with you, I have a couple of questions about Montgomery's able to pick his hole, but in a power or gap scheme, there's only one hole. You're going up the left side B gap, go. And once you get Montgomery through that hole, he's a dynamo at the second level. Herbert's vision is very reminiscent of the former running back to play 24 in Jordan Howard, who is also quite the zone runner himself. But he's like Howard if you amped his speed up like 2 letter grades. And like you said, when Herbert hits a hole and just turns the jets on, he just flies down the field. He looked so dynamic. Normally, you look at any running back that has 7.9 yards per carry, and you'd think to yourself, well, he must not have gotten very many carries. But 159 yards with 2 scores speaks to itself. That's what a day. And let's throw some flowers around, JB, because it wasn't just Herbert. I thought Eddie Jackson had a phenomenal game at safety. The pick is actually circumstantial. That's picking up off a good play from Kindle Vildor, but he had multiple sweet breakups. He had some big run stuffs where he walked up for it. There was a particular, I remember, red zone third down where Davis Mills fired a strike to, I think it was Brandon Cooks, and Eddie was on it so quickly that he broke the play up with a huge hit. I mean, they got big plays at a number 4 all throughout the game to keep the Texans out of the end zone, and then 58 had, I think, the game of his year so far. I mean, it's hard to tell when it comes to linebacker off the all-22, because certainly Roquan early in the game was getting blocked out of the hole, but near the end of the game, it felt like he was right around where the ball needed to be. I thought he had a very solid one, as well as some of the defensive linemen, though, again, how much can you really take at first viewing? Who else did you see that played well?
Well, I mean, Roquan definitely pops. I mean, he needs to get all the flowers that are available to him. He had a rough game last week, really washed out in a lot of running plays, and that Green Bay running attack was really impressive, and a lot of it was taking care of Roquan. Today, he really recovered. He was all over the field. Looks like he had 16 tackles, at least in on a tackle for an assist or solo. 2 of them tackles for loss, and obviously had the big play at the end there. So, Roquan obviously deserves all of that. Defensively, I mean, I want to make a joke that Jalen Johnson wasn't targeted for a third straight game, but of course he didn't play in this game, so that doesn't really count. I thought that, obviously Gordon had a rough game. We can talk about that at some point. He just looks pretty lost. Maybe the idea of him playing inside and outside is a little bit too much to put on a rookie. I think he's getting taken advantage of in terms of matchups. I thought the Texans did a pretty good job of putting players on him that could take advantage of him, and they did early and often, which was just unfortunate and frustrating. I mean, I'd like to see the all-22. You can't really tell from a broadcast view with the safety play all that well. It looked like Eddie Jackson had a good game. I would have loved to have seen the end zone view with the pick, and if he keeps his feet in, because it looked like he wanted to run. So would he have had a path to maybe try to get back? I always want to watch Brisker. I want to see his development as well. So those guys, I think, probably played pretty well because they limited the Texans. But again, that pick is big because it was in the end zone, and so you're talking about points off the board there. This game very easily could have swung the other way, but timely interception, timely turnovers. Put them in a position to win the game at the end. It also prevented them from going down. So it's a good defensive performance. It's a good team win. Even if your quarterback's not carrying you, that's okay if the team can carry you.
And you know what? I need to give flowers to number 22, because one thing that I will personally say is that, so I've been a Bears fan for like 16 years, right? And as I have watched cornerbacks, I think it's very easy to have overinflated expectations for what a depth cornerback should be in the NFL. I mean, you can't stop everybody. And while you expect maybe a little bit more than Kyler Gordon's giving you right now, you have to make a play every once in a while. And I'll applaud Kindle Vildor, not for being outrageously skilled, not for being incredibly fast, but his hustle and his grit definitely shows up on the occasional play where he then dives over and makes a play for his team, like popping the ball in the air the way that he did. I thought he, in particular, got one back after giving up a few, and that's all you can do at the cornerback position. And he in particular displayed really surprising resilience, especially after last year, where he had a year that made him delete his Twitter because fans were just accosting him over play that may have actually been blown a little bit out of proportion because people acted like he was a gaping hole in the defense as opposed to just not very good. But credit to Kindle for reminding us that, hey, if you're physical through a receiver's route stem and competitive, even when they try to come inside on you at the goal line, good things can happen.
He's scrappy, he's a fighter. He's got a memory of a goldfish, right? Like those are the things that you want. He is a little overmatched regularly. But again, as a guy that's coming in and getting reps regularly now, he's fighting for those reps and he's doing well with them. So yes, he does deserve some credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, JB, we've got a little bit more to talk about as we talk about just the way that this game really finished out, but we've got to get there or let the sponsors get a word in. So we will catch up to it right after the break. See you then. And we are back with Bear With Me. I'm talking to Jeff Berckes, the one and only on the Windy City Gridiron Podcasting Network, as we break down a big Bears win over the Houston Texans. Now, it was thrilling, JB, but once again, it felt like it was absent a few players' contributions. I have to ask you, because I know EJ eviscerated Cole Kmet. And we could talk about Kmet if you want to, but Jeff, it's hard to find a bigger Darnell Mooney supporter than you, and he's been very, very quiet. This isn't some, like, blogger, like, ho, 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 gotcha. It's more, how are you feeling about what's going on with number 11?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to understand exactly what's happening with this passing game. Cole Kmet had one nice play there. It was a 24, 25 yarder. That was a nice play. Only caught two passes on 3 targets, and then Mooney's stats: 2 catches on 6 targets, which is rough. Like that is not a good conversion rate for a receiver. So all of the talk in the offseason, I joked that those guys were, best friends forever. They were going to make friendship bracelets. They were going to have. They had this kind of bond that they seem to have, where they're basically becoming brothers, and they're going to sign Darnell Mooney to an extension because there's no way that Justin Fields is going to let Darnell Mooney leave because they're so close. So he would pepper him with targets the whole year, and they're just not on the same page. They don't look very good. Mooney's not stepping into that role that I thought he played pretty well last year, and so are they scheming to take him out? I don't know. Is it a lack of secondary options? I don't know. I don't think there's enough volume for us to really tell. That's part of it. But overall, yeah, pretty concerned about Mooney. I actually think at this point I have to just say I was wrong on Kmet. I mean, he's just been pretty brutal. EJ's review of him after the second week made me think like, well, I was just completely wrong. And in camp and in preseason, everything was pointing towards Cole Kmet having a giant year. It's what it looked like. He was just going to be this target hog. He was going to be number 2 target in the offense, and he looked good. He looked lean, like he looked like he really took advantage of the offseason. And he just hasn't really done anything. He's kind of a non-factor, and so I will take an L. That's fine. I've been wrong before. I'll take it. I'll take another one here. I'm going to hold out hope on Mooney, but at some point you do need to start showing it.
And I mean, it's not as if I think that anything that's happening this season just invalidates Mooney as a player. I mean, for crying out loud, we're talking about somebody who had a 1,000-yard season in 2021. So it's not as if we just throw the baby out with the bathwater. The trouble becomes, Jeff, if Darnell Mooney can't get going after all of that talk about Fields and Mooney's chemistry, at what point do you beg the question on is the proof in the pudding when it comes to, again, tying back to Justin Fields? Now, the worst part, if you don't mind me going into it, Jeff, is I feel like just like in 2019, we have re-entered the chicken or egg question yet again. So is the offensive staff not confident in Fields because Fields, through OTAs, through training camp, through all the times that they've watched him in practice, because trust me, Bears fan, they have attempted way more passes in practice than just the 45 that we've seen in games. Has Fields lost their confidence in those, and therefore he's making a good decision, quote unquote, to go away from Fields and try to win around him? Or has the Bears' offensive staff done such a poor job instilling confidence in Justin Fields and making him feel like he can play loose and do whatever he needs to, that it has created the unconfident, hesitant quarterback that we see today, who actually looks, in my estimation, Jeff, less comfortable than he looked against the Vikings last year in the Nagy offense? I don't like being here. because I think you'd agree there's way too many semantic variables that we just can't answer these questions. I mean, there's a whole lot of wait and see and cross your fingers that maybe it becomes apparent, but we don't really get to know in this setting. It is just bizarre because we see somebody in our comments section that says, guys, it's just the third game. And I want to agree with you, but the Bears yet again failed to eclipse 100 net yards passing in a day and age where people break 200 passing yards on their bad games. It feels like it's hard not to sound the alarm bell. And Jeff, if you had to guess, do you think the fault lies in any specific place? How much better can it get from here?
I think that I have to say that the biggest culprit right now has to be game flow. And if you're not hitting the early ones and you are popping off such, positive runs with regularity, that the play caller is going to continue to reward the plays that are doing well. And so I think, and particularly when you're in a close game, it's understandable. And so I think given the small sample size, 3 games, one of them in a monsoon, it is understandable. Part of it though is like, hey, it's a 3rd and 6 and we're going to run. No, like you can't do that. Like you can't run on 3rd and 6. You have to be able to put it in his hands, roll him out, give him the option to run, give him, let him try to win that rep and convert the first down. You're basically waving a white flag when you're running on 3rd and 6. You're not going to convert many of those. It wasn't even a creative run. It was just kind of line up and run it and 3rd and 6. That was very disappointing. That one got me a little bit there. That would be one of those like, boy, they don't have confidence in him. But I think in general, you have one part of your offense that looks like it's really working and you're coming off of a game where it was really working. And so now you're feeling yourself, right? Like you're feeling yourself in the run game if you're Luke Getsy. Like you think, hey, man, I got this figured out. We can run the ball. We can run the ball on anybody. I'm going to keep calling these runs. And when you're in a close game, how do you argue with that, right? So I'm going to put it there, a number one. But the part where it looks like Fields is hesitant, he's not pulling the trigger, he's not throwing the ball downfield when it's there. And then he's had a couple where he just is forcing it in. I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, I mean, that's just bad decision making, and it's not understanding what NFL open is or not pulling the trigger when you have the opportunity. Those are concerning things. It's a small sample size, but those things start to add up and you can't ignore them forever.
Yep. I can't emphasize enough. Jeff, I'll ask you plain. Are you out on Justin Fields?
Oh, no. I mean, you can't be.
Neither am I. I mean, nobody is saying that they are out. What we are saying is that it's hard to be excited and it's hard to be like amped up and very like it's hard to look into the future and get jazzed up about the fact that this Bears team ran their way to a 10-point lead, Jeff. They were up 10-0 and they had the ball. And then after a negative run, they were pushed to 2nd and 11 and Fields had Cole Kmet wide open in the seam on what looked like cover 3, and he sent the ball straight into Jalen Petre's hands, which immediately ignited 14 unanswered points as the Bears gave the lead up. It felt as if, to me, if there was a damning thing we could say about this game, it's that the Bears were smoking the Texans, and Justin Fields felt like the reason it was close. And that's just what you never, ever want to say about your first-round quarterback, that you're hoping is the franchise guy, because it felt as if every time Justin got an opportunity, something went wrong. And it was not normally that the offense failed him. That is a criticism that I could actually levy last week if we wanted to, like if we really tried to look. But this week, I don't think Lester's sack watch is going to be kind. I don't think my All-22 review is going to be kind. It feels like it's tough, even immediately after the game, to dig up positive things to say about the quarterbacking situation right now. It's just not where either of us wanted to be after the Bears played one of the worst defenses in football.
I think that's fair.
There you go. Well, Jeff, it is only one football game. So as the Bears...
And they won.
But as they head to the Giants, where they play against where they play, interestingly enough, one of the other head coaches that they had the opportunity to potentially hire. Well, I mean, I guess it depends. If you believe Brian Flores, it sounds like maybe Dabo was never on the market, but that's neither here nor there. How do you feel like this game impacts that one, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I think this is who the Bears are. They're trying to figure it out. I think that if they're able to go into New Jersey and, let's not forget that they don't actually play in New York. If they travel to New Jersey and they're able to run the football really well, then they're probably going to continue to do that. Why would you go away from that, right? I don't know how long Montgomery's going to be out. That looked pretty bad. So let's assume that it's Khalil Herbert in the one spot. If Khalil Herbert's running really well, you want them to continue to do that and to continue to play good defense and try to take the ball away from Daniel Jones, right? Giants are playing some ugly football right now. They're 2-0, but they have 2 ugly wins in their belt. And I don't know what they got tomorrow night against the Cowboys.
Against the boys, and I think it's
Right.
in New Jersey again.
Right. So we'll see what they look like tomorrow. They'll have a national game that we can all watch and we can all scout, right? They'll come off a short week, right? So the Bears got that going for them. But I don't think their approach is going to change. I think they're going to continue to try to run this offense. And if Fields shows that he's playing well, I think they'll probably give him more opportunities. If the Bears start to trail in the game, they're probably going to have to give Justin Fields more opportunities because that's how you come back in a game. So let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's hope that they earn it the right way. Let's hope that it's Justin Fields playing well and earning more of those snaps where they trust him with the ball. But no, I mean, they're 2-1. They could have, if the call was made correctly on the field in Green Bay, they would have played a pretty close game against Green Bay. It obviously broke open and they lost by 3 scores. But they're 2-1, and if you tell the Bears fan before the season, hey, after the Texans game, the Bears are going to be 2-1, do you take it? You take it, absolutely, because that's fun. They won 2 football games, right?
To your point, Jeff, if you asked a nerd like me early in the season, like, okay, what is your ideal football result for the Chicago Bears? I would have said they lose every game and Fields looks amazing. In 2022, this was the one year where it's like if we could get that somehow, I'd love it. Well, the Bears so far have got the opposite on their hands. Jeff, they're winning a lot more football games than I definitely anticipated they would. Because it's funny, you talk about how the rain game is impacting a lot of their passing stats. So far, rain game's the best game they had. Since then, on dry fields, they've only passed worse. So from there, we then see a stingy defense. Looks like a stingy defense. The running attack looks worlds better than I ever thought it would. I mean, I definitely didn't have money on Sam Mustipher, Tevin Jenkins, but also Lucas Patrick. We're still doing that, and we're just gonna look past that for now. Larry Borum, Braxton Jones looks like a boss out there running the ball, and Cody Whitehair. I did not have this group with Economius St. Brown, Byron Pringle, and Darnell Mooney just grading the road on every team in front of them. I mean, whether it was the Packers, whether it was the Texans today, they were smoking hot, and I can't imagine it's going to get better again, or like it's going to decrease against the Giants. Maybe not 281 yards, but we're hitting the point, Jeff, where the proof may be in the pudding, and the running attack may just be good. The question then for me becomes, okay, how's Wink Martindale going to react? Because we're talking about one of the most crazy, deranged, blitz-happy quarterbacks, or blitz-happy defensive coordinators in football. And I don't know why, if he's facing a quarterback who loves to hold on to the football, he's not going to just send blitzes almost every single down. So we'll have to see what happens, because like you're saying, I don't know if there's a way for Justin Fields to walk out of New Jersey with a win without the beating a Giants defense that's going to come for him, because the Texans sat back and still managed to kind of shut him down. The Giants are not going to sit back. They're going to come at him, or after him, and it'll be a test. That's for sure. Sure hope he passes. Be awfully nice.
I mean, it's interesting to see how he would react to different styles, right? And if he kind of struggled with what was in front of him today, then you would think that maybe, Martindale takes that and says, well, I actually am going to sit back a little more because that was clearly pretty effective. But he, Tiger don't change his stripes, right? I mean, he is what he is. He probably can't help himself. He's probably going to come after Fields. But the other thing is, at some point, you get a quarterback, you blitz him, and he is able to use that athletic skill to get out, escape blitzes. He starts making those plays because now it becomes less about thinking and more about reacting, right? That or broken plays. I mean, you said the best of the three passing attacks was against the Niners. Well, that was a huge broken play that skews that data, right? And I think that's part of what makes Fields so dynamic is that, and why we get so excited about him is because he can break open a game when he's out of structure or when you're putting him on the move and you're saying like, hey, take the deep ball if it's there. If not, like, take it underneath or run the ball, right? Like you've got multiple options right in front of you. And so, if they do come after him, they best not miss because if he's able to break contain or break the pocket, he's pretty dangerous still. Like, I mean, he had a 30-yard run earlier in the game. So he still has that ability to just gash you and make you really regret coming after you. So I don't know. There's not like a particular defensive scheme that I'm worried about people playing against Justin Fields. I don't feel like that's where we're at. With the last guy, it was always like, I always worried about somebody that would be just super creative and just throw a bunch of different stuff at him because he just didn't seem to react very well. And I don't know that I feel that way about Justin yet. It's just more of I don't have enough data. I mean, I hate to come back to that, but again, 45 pass attempts in 3 games is just not enough to really know exactly what his trends are.
Totally. And the question then becomes, Jeff, I'll close it with this, and then we can go into final thoughts. I don't know whether we are looking at a small sample size, because we clearly do not have a big sample size here, through 3 games. Is the small sample size begetting over analysis, or is Justin Fields earning the small sample size, which is not what you want? So I'm very curious as things move forward. I mean, like you said, at this stage, Jeff, I remember back when Nagy was calling plays, the running game wasn't working. A lot of fans wanted him to commit to the running game. And on the same podcast years ago, I said, why would you go away from what's working? And to apply the same thing, the Bears are toting the pill for a lot of yardage. Whenever they're scoring points, it's because they're running the ball better than, darn near any team in the league at times, JB. They're cracking explosives on the ground like I haven't seen them. You could probably roll up all 4 years of Nagy's tenure's explosive runs, and I think they're on pace to eclipse them in just this year alone right now. And so the Bears sticking with the ground game doesn't bother me like I think I want it to, because I don't have enough tape that defends Justin Fields right now to warrant giving him the ball more, which is trouble in and of itself. And hopefully the Giants game will change that. I mean, I think that's what makes this game so funny, Jeff, is technically the Bears won, and I'm not about to pretend that they lost. From the collection of snaps that we got on offense and defense, the biggest takeaway, being quarterback related, is way more worrying than a win on the score sheet says it is. That's the development attitude as opposed to the win-loss attitude. But you know what, Jeff? If the spiny Bears team steals a win on the Lions and beats the Vikings one way or another, they could end up making more noise in just the win-loss playoff competitive piece of this season than I ever gave them credit for, because they're getting a lot of the right plays at the right times. I can't speak to their discipline this week, but they certainly didn't shoot themselves in the face with a lot of their penalties. Some of the penalties, like false starts and whatnots, those will happen, but they kept things like defensive holdings and roughing the passers down so that they allowed the Texans to beat themselves cleanly there at the end of the game. There are a lot of pieces to this Bears team that you can actually say arrow way up. It's just such a bummer that once again the quarterback scenario is as dire as it looks, because again, not out yet, but to say that alarm bells are sounding is an understatement, because just off the cuff, Jeff, I think this is the worst game Fields has played in his career, and that's not something you want to say about a second-year quarterback, especially coming out of a rookie system where everybody described his offensive coordinator / coach as completely brainless. So we're just going to have to see what happens next. But what do you think? Final thoughts on the game?
Well, let me put it into Midwestern terms. And that is when you get a storm front that comes through and they pop on your TV and they say, tornado watch. And then they say tornado warning, right? So tornado watch means like, hey, conditions are set where we're worried that there might be some, potential for tornadic activity. Tornado warning is like, hey man, we spotted funnel cloud. We've seen it. Like we know that they're there. Take cover. Don't mess around with this. This is the time where you say, hey, you know what? We're in the equivalent of tornado watch for quarterback stuff. These are some conditions that we have seen in the past that should make us at least look at this harder to see if we see anything that's going to develop into something that's catastrophic. Okay. This is not tornado warning time. This is tornado watch time. So let's put it that way. That's my final thought on the Fields thing. I'm very happy with the other stuff. I'm happy to get a win. Again, it's very hard to win in this league. You look at this schedule. There are some other games that are going to be winnable, including this week against the Giants, the game against the Commanders, which is still a dumb name, the game against the Jets and the Falcons, right? That's 4 games right there where there's at least a pretty winnable likelihood or potential. There's also a lot of games against teams that are going to go deep in the playoffs that are going to be very difficult for the Bears to compete in. And you've got those divisional games that are on there as well. Enjoy it. We don't know if this Bears team could finish 2-15. They could finish 8-7 or 8-9, right? Like that, whatever the math is. When they changed 16, I forget how to do math. So just enjoy this for what it is, because you never know how many of these you're going to get, and then we'll all be eager for football season, come February. We can't wait until football season. So just enjoy it for what it is. Go to work tomorrow and hold your head up high that the Bears were able to hold serve against the Texans at home.
I mean, that's the secret, right, Jeff? Is the Packers, whenever they play the Bears, they look like the best version of themselves. So the only game that the Bears have lost is the best version of a very, very good football team. So, I mean, alarm bells or not, I loved your tornado watch, tornado warning. You should expect that on Headliner here soon. But either way, Jeff, thanks so much for coming and hanging out with me. We've got a nice little slate of football games here for the rest of the season. I love noon games. Honestly, I love the noon game then lets you just settle in for Sunday afternoon and Sunday night football. And there's some interesting ones on the calendar. But, Jeff, what a Bears game. Got some fun things to break down. Honestly, I will take a win any day over a loss where the Bears just got tanked. There's a lot of fun things that we can talk about on this offense. But what's next for Jeff? What's next for Jeff Berckes?
Another packed week ahead. We'll be working with Lester tomorrow on Bear and Balanced, of course. 10 Thoughts comes out generally on Tuesdays, sometimes Wednesdays when I struggle to get it out on Tuesdays. And of course, Bears Over Beers is Wednesday night. So Monday night for Bear and Balanced, 6 o'clock live stream on Second City Gridiron. Live stream at 8 o'clock Central for Bears Over Beers. The names all sound the same on Wednesdays. So come hang out with me and EJ. This week might actually move because I have a conference, but whatever. That's check our Twitter, make sure that. And then we have the 10-minute drill. So make sure you're checking out Second City Gridiron and all the goodies that are coming out there.
Big stuff, Jeff. Can't wait. Perfect. Thanks so much for coming on. And to everybody else, bear down. See you on Tuesday night as we talk through the All-22. And thanks so much for bearing with me. Jeff, we are clear recording. Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. I need to actually call the stream here in a little bit because I just got an email about a severe thunderstorm warning, and I can sure hear the thunder outside. So I don't want to get caught in a power outage situation. Those are always awkward. But either way, Jeff, I feel like I know we said a lot of this on the podcast, but it's such a funny time to be a Bears fan because in theory, I don't actually know how they change things at quarterback for the better if they don't have a high draft pick. Like, I don't know if the team is necessarily in position to just trade up and get a quarterback. I also, to be plain for anybody in the chat that's about to say this, I don't know how badly Fields would have to play for that to be a reality this year. Like, truly, Jeff, if you were Ryan Poles, how bad does Fields have to look? Like, does it just need to never get better from here?
Well, Poles isn't going to make. You mean like to draft somebody new at the end of the offseason? I mean, this is Eberflus's team, right? I mean,
totally. To hit the what I'm thinking is, like, so say that you're Ryan Poles, right? What does Fields have to do to either play himself out of the plan, right, or to play himself back into the plan? If you were Ryan Poles right now, is Fields out looking in or in looking out if you just had to make the call? Because honestly, to be clear, I'm not saying after this game. I'm saying, where do you think he was? Where do you think he is? Does that make sense?
I think Ryan Poles is making sure that his scouts are looking at quarterbacks because he should be doing that anyway. And I think that he knows that in the back of his mind that he's going to have to make that evaluation at the end of the year, right? I mean, I just don't think that you can do it now. But he's not, I would assume that he's not interacting to that extent with Eberflus. I'm sure they talk, but he's not saying like, what are you thinking, man? Are you out on him yet? Like, they're not there yet, right? They're trying to win games. They're trying to make this work because this is the plan for this year. But I think, like anything, they're going to take that time after the season to evaluate all of their players. And they're going to take that time for Justin Fields. They're going to take that time for David Montgomery to give him a second contract or not. They're going to take that time for, Roquan Smith to see if they want to extend. They're going to take that time with everybody. I know that's a little bit of a cop-out answer, and that's not what you want to say. But for me, I would say that it's likely that they are going to hope that a full 17 games is going to show them that he is the guy, because that is a much better answer than that he isn't the guy. I think they want the answer either way, because then you have certainty and you can say, let's say he's not the guy. I'm not saying I believe that, but let's just say
he's not.
Proves himself that he's not the guy. But if you know that by the end of the year, then that is an answer. And you want an answer, because then you can start to play the rest of the team building game with, hey, we know that this guy isn't going to be the guy, so we're going to either have to go up and get another guy, or we're going to have to build out the roster and try to attract some veteran or trade for, there are other ways to do this, but I think that they want the answer by the end of the year. I just don't think the Fields has to show that he's like a top 5 quarterback by the end of the year. I think he just has to show that he has the tools to get there, and then you flood the offense around him with all the talent that money can buy and draft resources can buy, and then you say, okay, go. Right? I mean, Look at Tua. I mean, God, they just beat Buffalo. I don't know how the heck they did that, but
off of a huge mistake at the end of the game by that receiver who didn't get out of bounds. Though, I mean, obviously other things. It's never that simple.
Right, but I mean, the fact that game was close, right? I mean, Buffalo looked like they were just going to go. They could go 17-0. I mean, Buffalo looked like they were just unbeatable the first couple of weeks, and
Buffalo lost like 5 major starters on defense.
I know, but still, but it wasn't.
That matters, Jeff. That's like half a team.
But Tua has looked good, and people wanted to leave Tua for dead, and he's a year 3 quarterback, right?
Yes.
So, what is the proper time frame? We all want Justin Fields to be like Justin Herbert, where, like, oh man, he's clearly like the dude, and
yes.
he's amazing. Yeah, but that's generational. Like, I don't know a lot of guys that have come. I mean, even people say stuff with Mahomes.
Yes.
Mahomes didn't play his rookie year. He played 1 game at the end of the year. Right?
So, if it helps, Jeff, I have an answer to this because I looked it up recently. Like, it's not there's a reason I'm being as alarmist as I am. And it's because when I looked up Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, I was looking for games in the double digits when it came to yardage. I was like, okay, I just want some peace of mind here. What are the worst games from a yardage perspective that these quarterbacks have played? And if I can be honest, Jeff, you would have caught me a year ago saying yards are stupid. Why would anybody measure off of yards? But Fields' yardage totals have been so low so far this season that they're just ghastly. They pop off the tape. Tua's lowest, if memory serves, was in the 140s to 160s, and that is a bad game by most NFL standards. And Jalen Hurts was in the 180s. I completely understand people saying compared to Herbert, these guys aren't the guy. We know that, right? Like 180 yards in a whole football game against the Cowboys. Duh, not the guy. But Fields right now is so low that while on a yards per attempt basis, he's not as bad as it looks because his attempts are obviously very low too. It's getting into real Dangerville where the question becomes, okay, if you did put Fields on the Dolphins, how much better is he playing? Because he had a wide open Cole Kmet and he threw an interception anyways. He has had wide open on that 29-yard run. I'm going to probably say this on the All-22 stream. Equanimeous St. Brown looked awfully open on the corner pattern, which is like the middle read because they have like one in the flat, one in the corner, and then like a deep corner. And that middle corner, that looked open. Fields dodged 2 tackles and made a 29-yard run out of it. But what do you want your quarterback to do? Does that go up or like does that go down as a plus from your quarterback because he made a play? It can't not. But also it started with a minus because he had a play open and he missed it because he hung on to the deep read and his eyes never got to the corner. So I don't know what to do here because I know in my case, when you look at these third-year quarterbacks, Jeff, I am with you. And if Fields was, I'll call it normal bad, we would be having a very different conversation. If he was, Mac Jones is struggling right now in his second year, that's fine, right? Joe Burrow's not having an outrageously good year this year. There are plenty of these quarterbacks that we could point to and we could say, okay, like what does struggle look like? But it doesn't normally look like sub-100-yard games. Especially sub-100 net yard games, where there was a point there in the middle of the game where Fields had as many completions as he did sacks plus interceptions, and he ended up finishing the game with a whole 8 completions compared to 7 sacks plus interceptions, and it's just, that's not good. You know, and like the question becomes, Jeff, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater either. And I don't want to be too alarmist either. But at what point do you start saying, wow, I expected bad. Oh, you've seen that sign. I know you have the whole, like, my expectations were low, but oh my goodness. And we're starting to hit that stage of the passing game where I didn't think it would be good either. I thought that we were going to have to talk Bears fans into, I was ready for it, Jeff, into telling people that somebody who averaged 190 yards per game was just fine and he was developing right where he should be. And 190 yards per game is not a statistical achievement. We aren't close. Right now, Fields is like passing props are going to keep getting lower. There's a point where at this rate on 10-minute drill, we're going to be like, Justin Fields has to pass for more than 115.5 yards, right? Like, I mean, he has to beat that number. This is getting embarrassing. And I don't know where it ends. They had him at 163.5 when we looked on Wednesday. He wasn't near it. And I don't know what they would have done because I don't know if they take net yards. So because sacks don't count for quarterbacks.
Yeah, they don't take net yards. That's just. I mean, that's what the stats are gonna keep, but that's not They don't actually credit those to the quarterback on those kinds of things. So
Chris Armstrong says Kyle Orton numbers. Jeff, I don't know how patient you are. You don't need to feel like you have to stick around for this. I want to know Kyle Orton's numbers. Let's see. Orton stats, because like even in 2006, I'm pretty sure it was better than this. Let's see. What's a decent year? Do you want 05, 06? Let's go with his second year as a starter. That doesn't count. Okay, so Kyle Orton had 184 yards, 104 yards, and 190 yards in 3 games in 07. As a rookie in 2005, he averaged, let's see, yards per game. Do they have this? Not quickly. by the looks of it. Looks like Kyle Orton had a couple bad games, like a 68-yarder and a 67-yarder, but he also had some 230-yarders. These are Kyle Orton numbers, actually. That's a good comparison. Like, well, Orton had like in the 149s, which like Jeff, he had 149 yards on 39 attempts. So I'm not about to be like applaud the guy, but we're having to go that far back to point out what Fields is statistically comparing to in the world of quarterbacks. And then if we go to, let's see, when he wasn't a rookie, like when he did take, I don't want to call it a step forward, at the very least, Orton's lowest was a 108-yard game, and his highest was, 149 is 5 interceptions. His highest was in the like 330s. I can't believe I'm talking about this. I cannot believe I'm comparing Justin Fields to Kyle Orton to try to feel. Am I trying to feel better? Am I trying to feel worse?
Listen, Kyle Orton can't run like Justin Fields, but Justin Fields can't drink Jack Daniels like Kyle Orton.
Mm-mm.
So they both have their strengths. It's Craig Krenzel, not Greg Krenzel, unless there was a brother that I don't know about.
There's no way.
But yes, Krenzel's numbers were, and that's exactly what Krenzel was in there for, was to just manage the game. One game with Craig Krenzel. It's such a vibe to be a Bears fan.
In year 2000, Jeff, you want to hear something really, really backbreaking? In year 2000, I'm looking at Cade McNown's statistics, right? McNown was consistently throwing for over 200 yards. He had really awful games at the end of the season, where he had, holy moly, he had a 9 for 29 game with a pick. But, like, Fields' average passing statistics are making the forward pass look illegal in the same, like, generation that Josh Allen is making the forward pass. Like, why would you do anything else? And obviously, nobody's out yet. But somebody asked me this on Twitter, Jeff. They said, okay, how much should we expect Fields to improve? And I responded back. I was like, a lot. The question is, like, how far can he go? Because he's got a really long road. Like, I mean, at this stage, we're looking at, okay, so where does it get better from? Like, this is the kind of guy who could win most improved player by getting to 200 yards even per game. Like, I mean, what, Jeff?
I don't know. It's bad. It needs to improve. I think realistically, by the end of the year, there are going to be some doozies of a game. Someone said something to the effect of, if the running game's so good, how is he going to get more pass attempts? There's going to be some games where the Bears are going to have to throw.
No, they're not.
To be in games. Like,
they ran it 3 times in a row against Green Bay. They went to 2nd and 20. They ran it. Like, you say that, Jeff, they're just going to go 3 and out.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to be in some of these games to even compete. So there's game flow in one of these games is going to be the Bears are down a couple scores early, and so they're going to have to try to do that. But I think a fair expectation by the end of the year is that he's making good reads with what he has. I mean, this excuse of he doesn't have anybody to throw to. There are guys getting open, and if he's putting it on them and they're dropping the ball, or like you look at it and no one's open, that is what it is. But a lot of these things are there. The scheme will get players open. He's got to pull the trigger when they have it. So I don't know. I think there's a reasonable expectation that he can run a functional offense by the end of the year. Doesn't have to be putting up 350 yards every week, but he's running a functional offense that puts up, 20 points every week, and is hitting more of the shots that he's taking than he's not, right? Like, I think that's a fair thing. Right. You're not asking for the moon. No. You're asking for competence.
Yep. I mean, at this point, Jeff, I'll tell you that if Fields was throwing for 100 yards, but he was getting the ball out on time, it doesn't even have to always necessarily be accurate. I mean, hey, I told you Davis Mills was throwing the ball on time, regardless of whether it was open or not. Did you see that in today's game or what?
Absolutely.
Like,
Right.
and you know what? I thought it was striking. The difference between Fields versus Mills. Mills looked like what you would call a bad NFL quarterback, or maybe not bad. Honestly, there were some points where Mills actually had a little bit of promise that I felt like he was showing. That really nice strike on like 3rd and 18 where he wafted to his left and spun the ball into somebody's hands for an open first down. It's kind of sweet. If he was in navy and orange, I'd have been like, yes. But the way that he said, or you would see him go through his read, go 1, 2, 3, check down, and he'd do it in 2 seconds, made me realize that when Fields sits in the pocket for 4 seconds and then takes the longest time possible to check it down, it is bizarre. Like, we're watching quarterback play that is becoming nonsensical, like, by the week. And I'm a huge Fields stan. Like, coming out of the draft, Fields was my obvious QB1. Coming into Chicago as a rookie, I thought there was no way possible the Bears could botch this. But I'm sitting here, Jeff, staring at a guy that is making it look like throwing the ball under 3 seconds must be impossible. Like, he's processing things so slowly, and I am sure that there's a lot going on in Fields' head. I'm sure he's overthinking. I'm sure he's putting too much pressure on himself. I'm sure there's external factors from the human being perspective. I mean, simply put, Fields is too smart to be this poor. But we talked earlier, Jeff, about how coming out of that Packers game, you could ask the question of, okay, maybe Fields is smart, but does he have those football instincts that tell Josh Allen to spin around in a circle in the pocket and lace a frozen rope to a receiver that's just barely coming open? And I don't know. I mean, how can we know at this point? Just right now, it's hard. Okay, I'll finish this because we got to go. Brandon Robinson, at one point, I was asking him, do you think that Ryan Poles is committing to Justin Fields? And his words were, he has no reason not to. I mean, to be very specific, Justin Fields is the Bears quarterback until he's not the Bears quarterback anymore. And so it made sense. I mean, this year, there's no guarantee that Justin Fields is the quarterback next year. And it's a strange year because normally that's the one position that you want to just straight up commit to, you know? But it feels like, Jeff, to your point, on this season, Fields is going to be right with the running backs, the receivers, the offensive line, and everybody else in those positional reviews at the end of the year, where they're going to sit down with Getsy and his quarterback's coach and say, Justin, here's where we're at. And he may not be part of his future, or like be part of the team's future if this continues, because it's a win. But I think the Bears easily would have had 2 scores on him had they had a normal passing game. And I don't want to be the guy saying I think Simeon would have destroyed the Texans, because we don't need to bring up the backup quarterback's name. It's not important. The Bears aren't going to play him. But that's not a standard you want to be thinking of, you know?
It's true. Why don't you go keep yourself safe? Make sure that you don't get blown away.
Ah, come on.
It's just Texas.
It's just Texas. We're just in Tornado Alley. It's no big deal. I mean, wait a minute. Iowa's in Tornado Alley, isn't it?
A little bit of it. Not quite Texas, though.
No, Texas is its own beast. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us. JB, thanks so much for joining me. This is going to be an awesome all 22 breakdown. I know that sounds silly, but games like this are exactly why we do this, where we have to beg the question of how bad is it? Was it really that bad? I know I came away from last week's game thinking the same thing about Justin Fields, and I thought the All-22 acquitted him a little bit by really damning everybody else. This game, though, coming out of it, it looked like guys were open, the line played well, the running game was awesome, and somehow the offense was still underperforming. So we'll have to see. Like, it's going to be an interesting show to follow. Can't wait for it. 10-minute drill coming at you. Guys, bear down, and thanks so much for bearing with me.